I'm actually speaking for two sport federations. One is the United States Hunter Jumper Association, of which I am the president, and the other is the United States Equestrian Federation, of which I am a director and also the chair of the National Breeds and Disciplines Council. So I think it's important to talk about, first of all, what is the difference between these two organizations, which many of you may know, but I don't like to assume. So United States Equestrian Federation is the national governing body for Olympic and FEI sport, and also has 29 recognized breed and discipline affiliates, of which USHJA is the largest one. USHJA is in charge of representing hunter and jumper sport, but not jumper sport at the Olympic or FEI level. So how did we start? Well, we started with a task force, which Summer Stoffel mentioned to you at USEF, which was formed by USEF's old president, Christine Tauber. And that group met. Many different breeds and disciplines served on that task force, and it was clear very, very quickly that there was no way that we were going to come to any kind of agreement. Everyone felt very strongly that they were right. And so, and probably for each of their breeds and disciplines, they were right. So USHJ went off on its own, and in 2013, we tried a rule change, and we failed miserably with microchipping. It was pretty bad. So we then went back to the task force, had a lot of discussions, and USEF asked USHJ to pioneer this rule change. And so what did we do from that moment? We decided that we would take that horrible experience and learn from our very large mistakes. So let me start off with a few numbers. USHJ has 44,000 members, of which we have at this moment slightly more than 208,000 horses registered in our system, and we register about 8,400 a year. USEF has 80,000 members, and at some point over the next 2 days, they'll release their horse numbers to me as well, and I can give those to anyone who cares to hear about them. Approximately 60% of all the horses that are in the USHJA system are horses that are imported from other countries. And so since 7 years ago, those horses are microchipped already because they are part of the food chain. And so we have many, many horses that are pre-done. I had a customer, or actually a trainer, call me the other day. She was very freaked out because she had to explain to her customers how they were going to have to microchip all of their horses. She has 48 horses in her training program. 75% of them were already microchipped, and she was delighted. And actually one was microchipped, has an FEI passport, and they scanned its entire body, couldn't find the microchip. So that does happen. All right, so taking our horrible experience forward, we identified what our goal was, and we built a map of our project. We laid out every possible thing that we could think about that could go wrong. So we dealt with the black helicopters. That was definitely part of it. We dealt with the idea that microchips cause cancer, that you could easily remove them, and that they cause other diseases. There's just a lot of problems and things out there that just aren't fact. And so what I did then is, instead of doing it myself, at that time I was the vice president of hunters, and hunters really didn't want to do this. So what I did is I went slightly outside our organization, and I found Summer, who actually, because of her experience as a breeder and in technology, I figured she would be great and a non-threatening person to introduce these concepts to our organization. So we proposed a rule change, and I proposed that it would be a really gradual rollout over several years, because what we were finding is the top of the sport, no objection, none, because those horses are generally from Europe and they are already microchipped, or if they're from this country, they are competing in FEI and they are microchipped for that reason. The bottom of the sport, no objection, because they want to know that that horse is that horse. It was the middle of the sport that we were experiencing a lot of difficulty with, a lot of turbulence. Surprisingly, what we got was a rule change that rolls out in 2018 competition year, which for us starts 12/1/17 is the beginning of our competition year. And we have microchipping only for those customers and members who want points for their horses or horses that are participating in our programs. As of 2019, we have full compliance. So you cannot come to a USEF hunter jumper show and compete without a microchip. That was huge. I mean, I was amazed that we got that. So I think education, proper use of media, being really straightforward, getting people from the outside to help you speak really helps transition people to the next level. So what was our purpose in doing this? Well, as Summer mentioned, consumer confidence was one of our largest platforms. And what did that mean? So an owner would know that the bay gelding that they bought was the bay gelding that they actually had, and that record was tied to the performance records. And now through age verification, we're starting to tie things to also the horse's breeding data, so they actually know who the horse is, and slowly through Equicore, USHJA will tie the European horses to the European competition data, which again just really helps owners know what they have. Shippers, they're delighted with this. I'm sure some of you may have received the wrong horse when they got off the trailer and your groom did not know that it was the wrong horse, but that happens. And insurance companies are also delighted with this because I suppose there's problems with that as well. Our other platform was sport integrity. So we have a lot of horses that are in the USHJA system, which you'd be surprised how many horses foaling date is 0101 with the year, and the breed is warm blood. Okay? You'd also be surprised, or maybe you wouldn't, how many trainers, and I am a trainer, but sometimes we do things like the horse doesn't work, so we say, oh gosh, time for a new ID, and you know what? New zip code, and off they go. So that's really bad for our sport. Our plan is to use microchipping in the beginning for several key initiatives. One is when animals get measured, because a lot of gray ponies look a lot the same. Our sport has a lot of problems with measurement and misrepresentation of animals. We will be using it for drug testing to help my friend Dr. Steven Schumacher back there, because I'm sure he can tell you that I am not lying when I say sometimes people substitute horses on drug tests. And again, a lot of bay geldings look exactly alike, so that will be a good thing. We'll also use it for member-to-member protests to identify the horse in question. And then the big one for us is at eligibility-based championships. So we can make sure that the horse that is competing in the ring is actually the horse that it's supposed to be. And that, in general, has to do with age. And, of course, as we stream forward with Equicore, then we will be able to know whether if we go back to performance data for eligibility, we'll actually be able to know if that bay gelding is really eligible, or if it's been doing the Grand Prix in, say, Germany, and here it's only supposed to be jumping 3 foot in our country. So what are our challenges? Well, our challenges are that as far as USEF is concerned, there are 20 other 8 breeds and disciplines, and they don't really, some of them feel that they want to do this. They have their own ways of identifying their horses, and they're not really sure that they want to join us on this. We have what one of my friends calls the shadow economy. That is the unrecognized horse shows where there's no regulation, and therefore members of our organization sometimes run up against this where the playing field is not level. Another challenge for us is outside influences, and this conference is a great example of that. So You'll hear again and again about the ISO compliant 11784, 11785 chips. That's what we require starting next year. Of course, maybe 840 chips will become necessary, and that will make it extra hard for our part of the sport, because now we will have the horses from Europe who are already pre-microchipped. We'll have the ones that were done to get compliant with our rule. Here will come the next segment. Now the states perhaps will want 840 chips, or perhaps there'll be a better chip that comes along, and we will be required to do that. And that makes people really angry, because even though we all know how much microchips cost and how much it costs to implant one with your vet, that seems like a lot of money to people. You know, I mean, microchips, our chipathons range in price from $25 to $35 a horse. You know, and then there's vets that charge substantially more than that, but they're also doing more things. Perhaps they're sedating the horse when they do it. But people see that, and they just see it as a further reason to avoid competition and a further reason to avoid regulation. So, you know, for me, I would say as we move forward, we're going to need to draw the line, and on the other side of the line will be the people who are currently compliant with whatever regulation there is within, whether it's a breed, a sport, federation, anything like that. I mean, think about it. Some of you might be old enough to have driven a car where you had an 8-track tape player underneath. Okay, so then we went from that we went to cassettes, then we went to disc players, then we went to MP3s. Now we're streaming music wirelessly through our Bluetooth. But it doesn't make listening to music, maybe the quality is better, but it doesn't really make listening to music that much different. And if every time we move forward and we said, oh, I'm really sorry, every person who has, let's say, a cassette player in their car, nope, return your car and you have to get something new installed, that wouldn't go well. So just something for you guys to think about as you go forward, because this was tough to get a sport to want to do this. So we want to make it easy and clear for your sport members to comply with whatever we all look together to do. And two other challenges we have is a microchip scanner does not cost that much, but because we will need to supply them to our competition managers, our drug testing vets, our stewards, people get very upset, and that money seems like a big bar to them. So we're working on that problem. And of course, siloed thinking, that is a huge problem as well. For our future, our goals, shine the light on our sport. Our sport has a lot of problems. So we need to work on that. We're very much in favor of a centralized database, but this is where I have to split into my two halves. So USHJA has decided that big data is a great way for us to go forward, and so we're very, very open with our data, and we shared our data with Summers' company, Equestrian, to be part of our beta testing so that we can advance the sport. Now I'm going to put on my other hat, which is USDF. No way, not doing it. That's ours. You're not getting it. So, you know, even, you just draw a line right down the middle of me, my two different sides here. It's quite difficult. Two other things that we're really passionate about is a project that I am working on called Who Are You? And hopefully I'll be able to release that next year. And Who Are You means when you buy your horse, can you actually trace it back to know everything about that animal from a competition standpoint? So will you know all of the horse's European records? Will you understand? Perhaps that will also move our part of the sport forward. And last but not least, hopefully we'll move towards universal equine life numbers. That's going to be a huge transition for us. But I'm hoping that I can slowly transition people towards that. I mean, if we could make this much movement with microchipping, I do feel that there's not too much that our side of the industry can do. Thank you so much.